Hi, I'm Carol from the Illustrated Vagabond. Welcome back to this Paint Along Tropical Sketchbook series. Today we're going to be painting this sweet little beach scene from Huatulco in Mexico. And I chose it because it has some fun elements. We've got the sand of the beach. We've got these nice crisp umbrellas. We've got a little bit of suggested background. I've got my drawing all drawn and ready to go. If you are painting along with me, and I hope you are, you can go to the course page and download your PDF. You can put it up against the window and trace it if you want to. You can freehand draw this. Put in as much or as little detail as you like, but do remember when you're doing the pencil part, you just want enough light lines to know where you're going. We're not drawing it and then painting it. We're giving ourselves a guide. So keep those pencil lines light and you won't have a bunch of graphite floating around in your finished piece. Once we have our piece sketched out, the first thing we always want to do is have a little strategy session. So I'm looking at this scene, asking myself what I'm going to do with it. I do want to have a light and lovely sky in the background, and I do want to have a wash of sand down below. So those things are important to me, and they are the largest and lightest washes. In watercolor, we always want to start with the largest and lightest washes and build our way up to the dark and dramatic as we go. Whites. Do I want to be preserving any white? Well, there's this whole row of white chairs in here, but I'm going to be painting it methodically, using dark to define what is light. You'll see what I mean in a moment. And I want my umbrellas to be perfectly crisp triangles, so I'm not going to use wax. I'm not going to use masking fluid. I'm going to use a patient hand, and I am going to paint around my whites. One of my favorite elements in this piece is this little boat, and we're going to put a little extra emphasis on it by making the colors very dynamic there. With our chairs and our people in the background, we're going to be loose and lively. So that's our plan. We are going to start right in with our sky wash. We're going to do this wet and wet. I don't mind laying some water down because this sky wash is going to be very light, and so a little bit of extra water lightening things up won't be a problem. I'm using my number 8 round. I'm going to use a little bit of cerulean blue. It's that fresh tropical feel, and I'm just going to lay that in there. Just a blush of color. Okay, I went right behind my trees because any gap in the tree is going to have sky behind it. And we'll give it a little more definition down here at the bottom. And there we go. On to our sand. We've got this great little strip of sand here. Let's get some of our yellow ochre. On its own, it is a little too punch on the nose yellow. The opposite of yellow on the color wheel is purple. Our primaries are yellow, red, and blue. Red and blue together make purple. So that means if we want to neutralize yellow, we add everything in that is the opposite of yellow. That's blue and red, aka purple. So I add a little bit of that purple that was on my palette into my wash just to neutralize it a bit. I'm going to load my brush up with that pigment. I'm going to move away from my piece a little bit, get down here horizontally, and I'm going to run that brush across my sand. What does that do? Well, this is a technique called dry brush, and what it's doing is it's letting little bits of light pop through, and that's going to help us get a little light in our sand. I'm going to clean off my brush, take out the excess moisture, and I'm going to nudge that paint right up to the top of my sand line. It'll just meld in with the paint I already laid down. I'm going to wait until that wash is almost entirely dry, and then I'm going to go in and put a little shadow under our boat. Oh, we got a little ochre on here. I'll just lift that out. No drama, no trauma. Out it goes. Before I can start painting my trees here, I need my sky to completely dry. If I put paint on a wet wash, that paint won't hold its edge, it'll spread. So I want my palm trees to be crisp. That means this is a no-fly zone for the moment. What I can do is go in and paint my browns on my hut, let them dry, and then I can come in and paint all the greens all at the same time. So I'm gonna cook up a little burnt sienna. I'm going to go through and paint my hut. I'm really kind of aiming for the side of these built pieces that is in the shadow so that I maintain a little bit of highlight right on their front edge. We're going to let that dry. What is next for us? These umbrellas are a super fun part of this piece, and I love that the color varies. You can see which umbrella is in front because they have these lines here. So that gives me a fun opportunity to go in with a few different colors and give that fun beach vibe. This one's going to be green. We'll come up here, do a yellow one. Maybe another yellow one back here. Just have some fun. I want to leave some of them white. I want to do some of them red. What I don't want to do is paint two side by side right now because those colors will bleed into each other. So I'm painting really kind of every second umbrella. We'll make this guy red. A little warm yellow. I want a blue one, but I don't want my colors to run. And I'm going to leave a little feather gap between the yellow of that umbrella and the blue behind it. As long as my two washes don't touch, the paint will stay put. As soon as those two washes touch, it's an open gate for that paint to flow through. So there, I've got a little fun color on some of my umbrellas. I'll let that dry. We've got a little orange roof over here. Let's get that in. I'll pick up my burnt sienna. And we have a couple of orange rooftops over here. I think my sky is dry enough now. I can paint those on. Maybe they'll be a little bit soft focus because of that water. Maybe they'll be completely firm. Oh, they're holding up just fine. There. That kind of says beach vibe. While we're doing these washes, let's get in there with our lemon yellow, our most kind of acidic and cool yellow. I'm going to paint the whole boat. Leaving just a little highlight right at the top. And when it's dry, I'll come back in and create some different values. Our sand down here at the bottom will be pretty dry now, so I'll mix up just a little of the darker burnt umber, touch of blue in there to make it more shadowy than brown. And I'm going to come in here and I want just a little bit of that shadow to climb into that yellow paint, saying that there's a shadow on this underside. There we go. Okay, he climbed too much. So what are we going to do? We're going to clean off our brush, come in here and soak up the excess. And now we have just the right amount of yellow and shadow mingling down there at the bottom. So that is our wash layer. Now we're going to want to come in as our sky is drying and get some of those soft palm fronds happening in the back. Palm fronds requires a little extra real estate over here because we want a nice mix of highlights, which is going to be our lemon yellow, middle greens, which is going to be our sap green mixed with sap green on its own is a little too earthy. Viridian green on its own is very plastic looking, but the two of them together make a nice lively middle green. There we go. And then we want our shadowy color. So now we're going to take our Viridian, mix in some of our ultramarine. Right now that's totally blue. Let's get some more green in there. And then to neutralize it, to make it really shadowy, we're going to pick up a little bit of this burnt umber. Now that is dark green that you could believe was a shadow. I'm going to switch to my little liner brush here. It's not a very accurate brush. If I was trying to do details, it's a little floppy, but palm fronds are floppy. So let's start with a little yellow, and we will start gesturing in some of this lovely action that happens in our most high lit spots on this tree. And we've got some highlights running through the middle here. Oh, sunshine. If I showed you out my studio window right now, I'll try and get a shot of it, but it is just absolutely dumping snow. So you can imagine how excited I am to get on this Caribbean trip. It'll be fun to come home as well, get some skiing in, but I do love me some sunshine and tropics. Okay, so I've got some of that light feathery yellow happening. Now I'm going to pick up my middle green and carry on with that light and lovely, just gesturing in. I'm going to cross over some of the same areas so my yellow and my green are intermingling and making just a myriad of mixes between the two. And you can see there's just enough moisture left in that sky to make this a little bit soft focus, but still hold its edges. So as I'm doing this, I'm not trying to recreate exactly what these trees are or what they're doing. I'm just trying to get the right kind of rhythm. So I'm looking for how frothy are these lines, and am I sort of replicating that? The other thing I'm doing is making sure that wherever my frond starts, it would plausibly attach to this tree. So I'm not going to make an arc over here where it wouldn't connect to anything. So I'm radiating out from that tree, boom, and then I'm radiating out from that leaf. I'm going to do a little more of this, and then I'm going to pause so that I can get a couple layers of definition in here. If I just kept painting, all of this would bleed into each other. So I want to let it firm up a bit, and then we'll go at it again. Okay, while we're waiting for this stuff up here to dry, to put more layers on, let's come down our picture plane a little bit. We're going to add in this other greenery. I don't want to paint it onto wet paper, and I don't want to paint it onto dry paper. I want to get a bit of a mix of texture. So I'm going to come in and just dab a little water, not too much because I want this green to stay fairly dark. More water equals lighter color. But I want there to be some spots when I hit it that are diffuse and flowy, and some other spots that will give me a nice firm edge. I'm going to sneak a couple more umbrellas in back here, just because I think they'll look cool. Fun. Okay, so I've got that going. I'm going to mix up some of my darker green. That was the ultramarine, Viridian, and then we dulled it down with a little of the umber. And I'm going to start in at these bases. My umbrellas should be dry enough now. I'm going to skip over my tree trunks and just get some lively color going here, fairly low down. Let a little bit of bush come across that tree. We're going to come down here Now, because I've got water in there, that's letting that color get pretty light. So let's add a pretty good bang back of that. And I'm just going to drop it into that water. I'm going to come up here and let it hit those spots where sometimes it was wet and sometimes it was dry. And it's going to make some frothy leaf type textures without having to paint every little frond and leaf. We're making an impression of the kinds of lights and darks that would be back there. Clean off my brush, and I'm going to pick up a little of my lemon yellow and get some highlights into the top leaves. And then it turns into frothy palm fronds again. And here we go. Do I want to change back to my little liner brush? No, these fronds are too short and that liner brush will get away from me too quickly. So a little bit of magic there. Make that into a believable bush shape. Still painting around my tree trunks so I can go in and do them later. If I paint something and think, gee, I wish I'd gotten that a bit darker, I just pick up some pigment and drop it in and see how it floats along wherever I had painted that. It also gives a little more of a dynamic finish, where it's lighter in some spots, darker in others, and a little more interesting. There we go. I want a little more dynamic color, so I'll add some darks in there by picking up pigment, dropping it in my wet paint. We can see a lot of that green right through our shack. We've got some umbrellas hiding back here that we want to paint around. If I just left that like that, very flat, let's add some different colors in there so it looks like, yeah, there's stuff happening. And we'll follow that down. Add some trunks for our trees and follow that line down. Okay, so where are we at? We want to get in here and get some darks in between all of our details on our porch. I could sit here and painstakingly paint all of those little triangles in, but who wants to suffer like that? I'm just going to zigzag my white candle over top of this. Is it going to be exact? No, but this is a very gestural little painting. I want it to be a bit loose and fun. I'm putting in a little wax over top of my burnt sienna there. I'll do that underneath here where the light is. And I'm just going to plow that green right over top of it. And I'm going to count on that wax resist to push any unwanted paint off of those wooden uprights. And how about that? Take the excess paint off. I feel like my paint on these sides could use some livening up, so I'm just going to dance a little extra paint in there, make myself some textures. Whoops. And you can see that wax doing its job. Pushing the paint off. I'll dot a little more on the in-betweens. But yeah, I got my railing. Once that's a little more dry, I'll go in there with my brush and feather out some of that paint. Not only is that quicker, but it's just going to make my painting a little more fluid. I'm going to go through now while I've got that dark, and I'm going to paint the darkness underneath my hut. I'm dropping those little green triangles in, and they're going to say, hey, there's a row of triangular umbrellas here. That's kind of the beach vibe we're after. But that's going to be pretty shadowed, so I'm going to pick up a little ultramarine and some burnt sienna and just make it dark and drop a little bit of it into my green to make it look more shadowy down there. I like it. Now I've got that same kind of shadow underneath all of my chair legs. So let's come in. I'm not going to sit here and count legs. I'm just going to put in some negative spaces that indicate that there are chair legs happening down here, like so. I'm going to come up above them, add a little more green, and I'm going to get my hand someplace where I'm not dragging it through something that's freshly painted, and I'm going to just kind of gesture in the backs of these chairs, kind of the shape that I've drawn on there, like so. With the tip of my brush, I'm going to get underneath those umbrellas, drop some extra paint in there so it's not too flat and homogeneous. We'll jazz it up a bit more in a sec. Come all the way over here. These little fun detail-y bits, right? Make some more chair backs. Am I lining up every chair? This one's got to have 4 legs. That one's got to be perfect. No, I am just making chair back shapes and some leg shapes, and I'm making sure that my brush is right under there. And now, because there are things like tables and people in there, I'm going to get some red. Because this is wet, this will end up in soft focus. So this is a little bit of the sort of impression moment. There's the odd red tablecloth. We'll just gesture some of those in. There's people in the background who will be wearing different colored clothing. Put a few red dots in. We'll put a few blue dots in. I'll put some burnt sienna dots in, imagining that they're going to read, like maybe there's a person in shadow back there. Maybe a little bit of our yellow ochre. Let's get some more tables, some more table bits in between some of these chairs. We need a couple more darks in there. So I'm going to get my green, my blue, my burnt sienna. Get a couple more of these little suggestions of something happening there. Just dots and wiggles, really. And I think that kind of does it. There is a pretty dark shadow with not much happening right there. Another one there. A couple of slices saying, yeah, maybe there's some other umbrellas back there, but we're not too sure. I'm going to come down and paint around these chairs. As these chairs come over this way, they're getting a little closer to us so we can see them a little better. So I'll paint them a little more carefully. So you can see that I'm not super attached to making the details exactly match my inspo. I just really want it to say beach chairs, people, atmosphere. So now while this dries, we can do 2 things. We can come in and give our boat a little more emphasis. It's already got 1 yellow layer on it. I'm going to beef up the bottom edge of that boat. I'm going to beef up parts up here that say that there is a side to that boat. I will even drop a little of my cad yellow in there to make the inside of that boat a little warmer, a little more like we're peeking into it. Okay, we're gonna let that dry. There's a little cluster of houses over on this side. I'm just gonna put in some shadows that indicate that there are some windows under those rooftops we painted earlier. We'll just give a few windows. Again, nothing too definitive. We're gonna come down and make that a palm tree. I'm going to put a little texture on this roof, and I'm going to come in and make some little tile type details. I'm just dotting with the tip of my brush, and maybe I'll do a little bit of that under these rooftops, teeny tiny, just enough to say, hey, these are those Mexican tile roofs you love so much. I feel like we need a little bit of shadowing in between these individual chairs, so I'm going to pick up some blue and just hit the odd spot. And for fun, I'm picking up some cerulean, and I'm going to put like a striped towel on this one and this one. A little more beach festive. Now, I promised you we would go back and hit these trees again once they were more dry. So I'm going to start with the dark this time. Usually with watercolor, we're working light to dark, but this time I want my lights to be on the top and I want to work my way there. So I've got some ultramarine, some viridian, burnt sienna, making that nice dark green. I've already got these wispy highlights. Now I'm going to go in with my bigger brush and a bolder hand, and I'm just going to get some of these darker leaves. And as we move up, I'm going to add some sap into that. Get some lighter greens, some livelier greens. They're getting hit by the sun a little more. Oh yeah. We've got those soft fronds in the background already, doing part of our work for us. They're going to shine through. And now I'm not just adding sap, I'm adding lemon yellow. Still to that same green, but I want to get a real sunny glow to it up here at the top. So in we go. Go back and add a little more dark. It's a little too light up there. I'm hardly looking at the reference at all now. I'm more just thinking what looks balanced and playful and fun. Light. I've got a little tree down here that needs some attention. I'm gonna make it 2 trees. What the heck? I'm gonna make it 3. There we go. I'm gonna add a little dark undershadow to these ones. Give them a little more dimension. And where are we at here? I'm gonna come in here. I'm going to cut out these umbrellas with the tip of my brush. I'm going to imagine there's another one going right off the page. Meld those in together. Greenery coming down. I'm going to make this little line here. Meld a little sunshine into it like it is a tree that's getting hit with a little sunlight. And then this, I'm going to pick up a little blue paint and make it 1 perfect little window. Can I resist? Nope. 2 perfect little windows. Little shadow under the eave there, little shadow under these guys. One thing left, I've got these tree trunks. I'm going to start my tree trunks with a similar green to what we have going here. And then I'm going to clean off my brush. I'm going to pick up a little blue, and I'm going to assume that as those tree trunks come down, they are getting a little more shadowed. Let's run a little shadow over the bottom of that umbrella. I just saw a very sweet spot to put another one of those dark windows over here. We'll make an arch. Sometimes just the way the paint dries, it tells you what it's going to be. We'll put a couple details in this other building back here. Some windows, being careful to make them about the same size. A little bit smaller than the ones that are in front. A couple of windows there. I'm going to pick up my liner brush. That tree trunk is still wet, so I'll be able to put in a little shadow and some little trunk details. Kind of firms that up, lets you know that the trees are in front of that greenery in the background. A little more in focus. Okay. We've saved one fun detail for the end. That is the shadowing on our hut here. So I'm going to pick up my 8 because it's got a little more control than that little liner brush. I'm going to mix up a nice dark color that really leans brown. So I'm using my burnt umber and my ultramarine. Getting that nice and rich by not adding too much water, lots of pigment. There it is. And I'm going to come in, paint a little shadow under our roof line there. This side is all dark there, darker than the trees behind it. So I'm down now to the very tail end of this painting. The last step is always really looking at your values, how light and dark things are in your inspiration, whether it's a photo or you're sitting painting from life. Look at those things that are the darkest darks and ask yourself, did I capture them? Are mine as dark as the ones in my inspiration? You don't need to make it all match exactly what's there, but you can get some really good clues from looking at that. And those things help me tell my visual story. Make a few more details back here. And that is our painting of Huatulco. I suggested in the beginning that we might be adding some ink to this. I feel like it doesn't need it. So the only ink I'm going to add is my borders. And I'm going to call that piece done. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you picked up some good tips, and I hope that you painted along. If you did, I would love it if you posted to Instagram. You can tag me at Illustrated Vagabond. Thanks so much for painting with me, and we will see you in the next one.